Welcome to Dave's Take. Today we are talking about Masters of the Air, the new World War II series from the producers of Band of Brothers and the Pacific. During World War II, airmen risked their lives with the 100th Bomb Group, a brotherhood forged by courage, loss, and triumph. Obviously, expectations were extremely high for this series. Whenever you make a World War II series in the same breath as Band of Brothers, which in my opinion is the greatest miniseries of all time, it's a lot to live up to. And I also really like the Pacific, but it wasn't just my expectations, I was just really excited for this series. Whenever you have Spielberg and Tom Hanks working together to make a World War II series, I feel like it's must-see TV. And I'm happy to say Masters of the Air was filled with incredible and powerful moments, and it's a worthy addition to Spielberg and Tom Hanks' World War II series. I first want to talk about what I liked about the series. The first thing I want to talk about are the performances. They are fantastic across the board. You can tell that everyone really brought their A game here because they knew they were making something very important. But my favorite performances in the series were Anthony Boyle and Nate Mann. I haven't seen them in much before, so they were a huge surprise to me, but they absolutely killed it. But the best part about this series is the story, which you could say the same thing about Band of Brothers and the Pacific. But the story here is absolutely incredible. It's extraordinary. It's powerful. It's another side of World War II that Spielberg and Tom Hanks wants to tell us, and it is absolutely unbelievable some of the things these men of the 100th Bomber Group went through. It's a side of World War II I didn't really know much about, the Air Force, the planes, and there are some aspects of it that are truly terrifying. And it makes you really appreciate some of the things that these men had to do, the sacrifices. Like I said, it just feels like a very powerful experience. And there are so many moments throughout the series where you just look at the screen and you go, wow, that is just fucking amazing. And all that should come to no surprise when you know the filmmakers making a project like this. But I gotta say, out of the three series, this is probably my least favorite. I would have to think about it because I haven't seen the Pacific in a long time. But Masters of the Air is probably my least favorite. And unfortunately, I think the biggest issue with this series is the filmmaking, which honestly came to a big surprise and kind of shocked me because the filmmakers behind this project, not just Spielberg and Hanks, but the actual directors and some of the other producers have made some really great things. The biggest problem with this series, and especially if you're comparing it to Band of Brothers and the Pacific, is it has this look and feel to it that almost feels like you're watching a movie. Like there's too much of this Hollywood gloss over it, which is a huge bummer because when you compare it to series like Band of Brothers and Pacific, there's this gritty, grounded feeling to it where you almost feel like you're watching a documentary. In Masters of the Air, unfortunately, there's really no part where you feel like you're watching a documentary or something. It always feels like it has this cinematic movie feeling to it. And one of the reasons why I feel like the series feels like that is its use of CGI. Obviously with these aerial battles and anything with the planes, you have to use CGI. And I think like 90% of the time, it looks fantastic. Some of these sequences up in the air are so nail-biting, they're so suspenseful, and I actually think those are really well done. But there are some aerial sequences that just don't look right, like some of the CGI doesn't feel like it's totally finished. But I'm not even upset that they use CGI in the aerial battles. They absolutely have to do that. I wasn't expecting them to use real fighters and film real sequences like that. My biggest problem with the CGI in the series, it feels like they use it in certain parts where they didn't really need to use CGI. Like sometimes there are parts where people are just talking on the ground, they're not even in the air, and you could tell that they're either behind a green screen or things were just digitally added. And I just thought that was a big bummer because you've never got that feeling when you watch a show like Band of Brothers or the Pacific. And there are moments throughout the series when it comes to some of the choices with the editing and music choice and how a sequence plays out, it almost felt really generic, which is disappointing because I felt like those types of decisions when you make a series that's in the same breath as Band of Brothers and Pacific should be above that. They should never make choices like that. Now, obviously, everything's not going to be the same. People have different style of directing and filmmaking. I get that, and I do appreciate Masters of Air feeling a lot different from Band of Brothers and the Pacific. But there's just some areas of filmmaking with this series where it almost feels too clean. I should never get that type of feeling when watching a show like this. Look, I don't want you guys to think I hate this series. I actually really enjoyed Masters of Air. There are incredible performances. The story itself is just so extraordinary. I can't think of enough adjectives to describe the story because it truly is amazing, some of the things that these men do. There are some incredible moments throughout the series that I feel like the filmmakers did a good job elevating those moments. But unfortunately, there are a lot of parts of the filmmaking here that made it feel too movie-like, too much of this Hollywood gloss, which is the complete opposite when you think of a show like Band of Brothers or The Pacific, when it's really gritty and grounded. So out of the three, this is probably my least favorite, but I gotta say, it is still a worthy addition because it is such an extraordinary story with incredible moments. And if you're a big fan of Band of Brothers or The Pacific or both, I think you're really gonna enjoy this series. I'm gonna give Masters of the Air 8 Davey Daves. I also gotta say the intro here is fantastic. It's another great intro to these World War II series. The Band of Brothers one is my favorite. It's spectacular, almost makes me cry every time. And the Pacific one is great too. And Masters of the Air, another great intro to these World War II series. So, Masters of the Air, let me know what you guys thought of it once you've seen it. I'm curious to hear. And thank you so much for watching. Click here to see more of Dave's Takes.